Hey folks, so today we are looking at reducing the development gap through the use of tourism, basically as a strategy to help countries move from low-income countries to high-income countries. So if you just pop that down as your title, reducing the development gap. And there's many different ways that countries can do this. There's fair trade, there's aid, there's trade, but we're going to look specifically at tourism. Okay, and our case study, the best case study that we look at is Jamaica. Now, Jamaica is a small island in the Caribbean, so I want to start by just very roughly, and honestly it doesn't need to be perfect at all, but just draw a kind of island shape like this, and we'll just write Jamaica on the inside, and then I'm going to put in a big arrow because Jamaica has been on a big journey, okay, from then to now. So before tourism existed, if you remember, tourism hasn't always been around, aeroplanes haven't always been around. They're still a relatively new invention, and international travel is still, relatively speaking, hasn't been going on for too long. So before all of that, in a time when there was no tourism, and you only had local Jamaicans living there, it was a low-income country. So just squeeze in lick there. It's a low-income country. Its main exports were sugar. So just draw some sugar cubes. These look more like building blocks, but there we go. So sugar, that's a primary industry. It involves farming for sugar cane. Oil, just draw kind of an oil barrel, which again is it's a natural resource, and mining for it is a primary industry. Now, the reason I'm writing this down is we know, don't we, that primary industries like sugar production and oil do not bring in high amounts of income. It's the turning them into something and selling them in the secondary and tertiary industries that do. But they had one more area that they could use to make money. And I'm just going to draw a bottle of rum. Now that was a secondary industry. So more money made selling rum. However, even with the sugar, the oil and the rum production, it was still a low income country. But luckily, Jamaica realised its potential. I'm just drawing some waves to show you it's an island. As a beautiful island with year-round sunshine. Because of its location in the Caribbean, it's spoilt for good weather. And it's got an amazing array of beautiful beaches with palm trees and plenty of scope for basically wonderful holidays. So there was a lot on offer, but they weren't able to make use of it until people started arriving in their aeroplanes and in cruise ships. And then the island changed massively. So what we're going to do is we are going to think about how people get there. So let's put a cruise ship up here. Just draw kind of a boat shape, a few more layers to it. There we go. And just in case we can't remember, we're going to write cruise ship. Okay, so we've got our cruise ship. Now, 1.1 million people, just going to draw a little stick person, visit Jamaica every year on boats. And on average, they spend $70 per person. Now that doesn't sound like a lot of money, But $70 multiplied by 1.1 million, I haven't done the maths for you, but it's a lot of money. Yet they spend, well, almost 50% less than people arriving by plane. Now, I'm really bad at drawing planes, but I will try. Something like that. There we go. Let's get some windows in there. I told you I was bad at planes. Right, okay, so on average, 2.5 million, so quite a few more people arrive by plane, and they spend, let's go, $120 per person. And the reason for that is obviously they are spending on accommodation and staying somewhere on the island and using the island much more, whereas the cruise ship visitors might only travel on and off via a port. There's a port on the north of the island, which is also known as Montego Bay. Now, the north of the island, because of the port and also the airport, which is situated in the north, has seen really high investment in infrastructure. There are quite a few new roads linking different places in the island, giving people lots of opportunities to travel around the island easily, and for businesses to spring up. And what's happened, I'll just put some dots across here, is there's become a bit of a north-south divide. Now, if you remember the one we did on the UK, it's the opposite of that. So here, the north is wealthier and there is more poverty in the south. So we've got our north-south divide, we've got our port and our airport, our new roads. That's right, new roads, as part of all the new infrastructure that's been happening in the north due to all the new visitors. Now, in the south, we just want to draw a section of road, just to remind ourselves, there has been no investment in new roads. So much of the south is still quite hard to navigate and to get around. And in the south, we draw a little sticks person, 16% of Jamaicans, so local Jamaicans, live in poverty. Okay, so that's quite a stark contrast to the wealth and the infrastructure and the amazing hotels and houses and businesses that are happening and springing up all over the north. Okay, so we know that people go there on holiday, we know it's a beautiful island, we know that there's been some really big positives and negatives. So let's just split. Let's do a little line down here. Okay, let's look at the positives to start with. So let's have a big heading. Positives. Right, the main positive has to be the income that has been brought in through tourism. And the total income every year is a staggering $200 billion. This is revenue that has increased since tourism. So since people have started going there, this isn't from the sugar, the oil, the rum. This is from visitors, hotels, shops, gift shops, nightclubs, bars, restaurants, all the kind of infrastructure that goes with tourism. Now, all of those bars and restaurants and nightclubs need staffing, and it's given 200,000 people jobs. Now, these local people are directly employed through tourism. And there's also indirect jobs as well. So directly employed or employment, slightly wrong, in tourism. You can write employed or employment. That 200 billion accounts for 24% of Jamaica's gross national income. Comes directly from tourism. So that's a huge proportion. And don't forget that all those businesses I'll draw kind of a bag of money here. Pay taxes. They have to pay taxes to the government. Otherwise they'd be operating illegally. So they get extra money, extra income from taxes. Now the government can then spend these on really kind of three main areas. Let me just draw three arrows. So the first one is things like education. Remember that it was not long ago a low-income country, so they're still building up those kind of key things like education and healthcare. And much of that is funded by the government. The other thing that leads to is improving the quality of life and the life expectancy, to how long people will live for, of local Jamaicans. It's literally causing people to live longer because of tourism and because of the improvements to people's way of lives. And the other thing the government are investing in, because this is a beautiful environment, it's got rainforest, it's got beautiful beaches, it's got incredible coral. It has to be looked after in a sustainable way. So the government are also looking at ecotourism and helping provide funding for that, which is a kind of sustainable tourism. And that's going on up and up and up. It's small scale, they're not huge developments, but it's great to see that that's being included with small areas where people can go and stay, maybe in the rainforest or at the beach, without a big hotel and all the gubbins that go with it. Now, it hasn't all been brilliant, so we've got to have the negatives as well. Remember, in a question you might well be asked to kind of talk about the negatives and balance them with the positives. Okay, so all these people that are arriving, and we're talking 3.6 million people, need to travel when they're on the island. So I'm just going to draw a kind of coach. A really bad coach. But these coaches, like all methods of transport, are quite wasteful, and they basically cause a lot of air pollution, along with, of course, the planes as well. So if we just put transport in brackets, coaches, planes, etc., so taxis, the lot, create air pollution. Not something you would expect to find on a beautiful Caribbean island, but with that many people in one place and that much transport going on, it is actually affecting the air quality. And the boats do that as well. Speaking of the boats, if we just put a little mini cruise ship in here. So cruise ships and boats, because of course they go out on smaller boats, fishing, see the coral, diving off reefs. So cruise ships and boats create water pollution just with their engines and oil and things going into the water. Also, they can damage the coral and that sort of natural environment. We know that coral takes a long time. Looks a bit like a tree, some of the fan corals. I'll just draw a piece of coral. With waste, with litter, with pollution, all those things. Also, the warming of the seas created through climate change affects them as well, but there is a local effect there. And then the final negative, we've mentioned it already, so I won't draw it again. In fact, I'll just put a couple of arrows to them, is the fact that there is this north-south divide where there isn't the same levels of infrastructure. In the south, there isn't the same investment, and 16% of Jamaicans are living in poverty, which means that they are living, well, we class it as less than $1 a day, so very poor quality of life, very low life expectancy. So there you have it. There's your case study for Jamaica and the pros and cons of using tourism as a way to boost the development gap. So tourism is a way to reduce that gap and actually create opportunities. And the only other thing I just want to add is over here, all these good things are created through the multiplier effect. Okay, it's a driving force, isn't it, of getting that money filtering down through taxes, through employment, and actually basically creating better opportunities for local people.